Hello everybody and welcome back to the second episode of the 2024 primary series going on the channel. If you have not already checked out the first episode in this series, it's going to pop up in the top right of your screen right now, so go check that out before we get into today's episode. But without further ado, let's get right into it, starting out with an update from the EP Studios. The Democratic and Republican parties have just released their initial primary schedules for the 2024 presidential election cycles, with each party coordinating 4 debates in July, August, September, and October of 2023. Each party is expected to schedule more debates as needed, with the strong belief that this election cycle will feature more candidates than any in American history. Starting with the first Republican debate hosted by Fox News and is scheduled for July 20th and 21st in Atlanta, Georgia. Both parties do anticipate splitting candidates into 2 separate nights of debates, similarly to how the Democrats did it in 2020. The first Democratic debate will be hosted by CNN in San Francisco, California on the nights of July 27th and 28th. Then on August 17th and 18th, CNBC will host 2 Republican debates in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and a week later on August 24th and 25th, ABC News will host the Democrats in Denver, Colorado. As for the September debates, CNN will host the Republicans this time around in St. Louis, Missouri, while NBC will moderate the Democrats in Chicago, Illinois. Finally, the October debates. Fox Business will host 2 Republican debates on the 14th and 15th in Phoenix, Arizona, followed by CBS hosting 2 Democratic debates in Charlotte, North Carolina. Those are all the debates that have been scheduled so far as we eagerly await more campaign announcements. Doug Collins, the junior senator from Georgia, serving since 2021, has launched his campaign for the 2024 Republican nomination in his hometown of Gainesville today. Rising to national prominence as ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee during the impeachment hearings of Donald Trump, Collins is a rising, eccentric voice in the Republican Party. Fresh off her re-election as governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer has thrown her hat into the 2024 Democratic race. Selected to give the Democratic response to President Donald Trump's 2020 State of the Union address, Whitmer initially gained national attention due to her swift response to the COVID-19 pandemic, which was met with broad approval across party lines in the state of Michigan. She was even discussed as a potential vice presidential nominee for Joe Biden in 2020 as well. The first African-American Republican to serve in the U.S. Senate since 1979. Tim Scott, the junior United States Senator from South Carolina, has announced his intention to run for the 2024 Republican nomination in Charleston this afternoon. Whether or not his fellow South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham enters the 2024 field as well remains to be seen, but Scott is considered to be a strong Tier 3 or Tier 2 candidate in the Republican field. Governor of North Carolina Roy Cooper launched his campaign for the presidency in Raleigh today. Cooper rose in popularity heading into the 2020 gubernatorial race in 2020, winning comfortably. Serving as Attorney General for over a decade, Cooper has plenty of experience representing a constituency whose views span a wide range of political values and public interests in the state of North Carolina. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul has stated his intention to run for president for a second time after suspending his campaign back in 2016, following a 5th-place finish in the Iowa caucuses. Son of former Texas Representative Ron Paul, he won re-election to a 3rd term as junior senator in Kentucky in the 2022 midterms. Paul and former Maine Senator Susan Collins are notably the 2 senators that have voted with President Donald Trump the least throughout his presidency. Often labeled as a libertarian, Paul is a self-described constitutional conservative and supporter of the Tea Party movement. Whether or not he'll perform better than in 2016 remains to be seen, but he's certainly the most notable Republican to announce their candidacy for 2024 so far. Another Kentuckian has announced their candidacy for president, this time on the Democratic side. Fresh off winning re-election to a second term, Governor Andy Beshear, serving since 2019, is a moderate Democrat whose social and fiscal policies are seen as left-leaning. At the age of 45, Beshear is one of the younger faces in the field on both sides of the aisle. The youngest Republican woman ever elected to Congress, Elise Stefanik, has announced a 2024 bid for the Republican nomination. Upon being elected in New York's 21st Congressional District in 2014, at age 30, she was the youngest woman ever elected to Congress at the time. Stefanik, a moderate, is one of the most bipartisan members in Congress, and has been an advocate for electing more Republican women to Congress across the country. She was critical of Trump's decision to withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement, among other things, but opposed his impeachment. Nonetheless, Stefanik will have to compete with her relatively low name recognition nationally in this primary cycle. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has entered the race for president today. Serving since 2015 and a member of the Republican Party, he's the third governor of any state to permanently use a wheelchair and the first disabled governor in Texas history. Formerly a justice of the Texas Supreme Court and Attorney General of the state, Abbott is one of the 10 most popular governors in the country according to Morning Consult's tracking of governor approval ratings. Big news coming out of Minneapolis today as Senator Amy Klobuchar has decided to run for president again in 2024, the most high-profile Democrat in the field so far. Klobuchar ran back in 2020, finding moderate success before eventually dropping out. Klobuchar is one of the most active members of Congress and has consistently been one of the most popular senators in the United States throughout her tenure. Coming under fire, however, for her role as Hennepin County attorney previously during the Black Lives Matter protests in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd in 2020, Klobuchar may be met with heavy backlash from the progressive side of the party in this cycle. We have reached the end of January, and 7 Democrats have so far announced their candidacy for president. On the Democratic side for the nomination in 2024, we have Massachusetts Senator Joe Kennedy III, we have Stacey Abrams, we have Mark Cuban, we have Governor of Michigan Gretchen Whitmer, Governor of North Carolina Roy Cooper, Governor of Kentucky Andy Beshear, and Senator from Minnesota Amy Klobuchar. So far, a lot more Democratic candidates are expected to announce in the coming months as we ramp up towards the actual 2024 primary cycle. A lot of heavyweights are still yet to announce, or at least are expected to announce in the coming weeks. Now, as for the Republican side, we have Governor of Massachusetts Charlie Baker, Governor of Maryland Larry Hogan, we have Senator from Georgia Doug Collins, we have Governor of Texas Greg Abbott, as well as Senator from Kentucky Rand Paul, and Congresswoman from New York Elise Stefanik. So these are the 6 candidates on the Republican side at the end of January. Also, a lot of heavyweights are expected to make their announcements in the coming weeks. And finally, let's take a look at a new NBC poll conducted today between all of the current candidates in both the Democratic and Republican fields. Massachusetts Senator Joe Kennedy leads the field at 21%. Both Senator Amy Klobuchar and Stacey Abrams are close behind at 19%. Followed by Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer at 15%, and finally billionaire Mark Cuban at 10%. Governors Roy Cooper and Andy Beshear come in at 6th and 7th, as both struggle with national name recognition. Keep in mind, this poll is certain to be subject to change as more Democratic candidates announce and as we head towards the debates this summer. On the Republican side, we are yet to see any true heavyweights enter the 2024 field. with Kentucky Senator Rand Paul leading at 27%, followed by Maryland and Massachusetts governors Larry Hogan and Charlie Baker at 24 and 20%. Texas Governor Greg Abbott trails a ways behind at 11%, while both Representatives Doug Collins and Elise Stefanik come in 5th and in 6th place. If you have not already checked out the previous episode in this series, this is the second episode, so go back and watch the first one if you have not already. Also, please make sure to like the video if you did. Also, subscribe if you have not already. Thank you guys all so much for watching. A lot more content is to come from this series and a ton of other series that you should go and check out across the channel as well. Thank you all so much for watching, and tune in next time.